In 2004, 21-year-old college student Maura Murray disappeared after crashing her car on a rural New Hampshire road. Her vehicle was found abandoned. No signs of struggle, no confirmed sightings, and no trace of Maura. This is the chilling true story of one of America's most baffling disappearances. On the night of February 9, 2004, a black Saturn sedan skidded off a snow-covered road in Haverhill, New Hampshire. The scene was quiet, remote. A few neighbors saw the crash. They called 911. By the time police arrived minutes later, the car was there, but the driver was gone. That driver was Maura Murray. Maura was a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She was bright, athletic, and intensely private. What makes her story so enduring isn't just the mystery of her disappearance, but everything that happened in the days leading up to it. That Monday, she emailed her professors to say there had been a death in the family, and she would be out for a few days. There was no death. She then packed her dorm room into boxes, took out almost all her money from her bank account, searched for directions to Vermont, and emailed her boyfriend, "I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I promised to call today though." What was she planning? Maura left the campus and began driving north. She had purchased alcohol and withdrawn $280 from an ATM earlier that afternoon. CCTV footage showed her alone. She made no calls to friends. No confirmed goodbyes. At approximately 7:27 p.m., a local resident heard a thud outside her house. Through the window, she saw a car stuck in a snowbank. The woman called the police. Around the same time, another neighbor, Butch Atwood, a school bus driver, approached the vehicle and saw Maura. She told him she had already called for roadside assistance and didn't need help. But that was a lie. There's no record of her calling anyone. Atwood returned home. 10 minutes later, police arrived. Maura was gone. The car had hit a tree. The windshield was cracked. The airbags had deployed. Wine stains were found inside. Her debit card, credit cards, and cell phone were never recovered. But her belongings, school books, clothes, snacks, were still in the car. It looked like she had vanished into thin air. Police initially treated the case as a routine missing person. But as hours turned into days, and no sign of Maura appeared, the concern grew. Temperatures were below freezing. Snow blanketed the area. Tracking dogs lost her scent within 100 yards, suggesting she may have gotten into another vehicle, or was picked up. But there were no tracks in the snow. No footprints. Nothing. In the following days, helicopters, dogs, and volunteers searched the woods. They found no trace of Maura. Her family and friends began circulating her photo, pleading with the public for information. The media picked up the story, and quickly, speculation exploded. Was Maura running from something? Was she planning to disappear? Or did she encounter someone who didn't intend to let her leave? The timing of her disappearance was chilling. Just days before, Maura had crashed her father's car near campus after a night of drinking. She seemed emotional. Her father said she was distraught, but not unusual. On the day she disappeared, she reportedly received a call that left her in tears. Her supervisor later said she had been zoned out during a shift and had to be escorted home. And then came the lie about the death in the family. Whatever Maura was planning, it wasn't shared with anyone. And after that crash in Haverhill, it was like she stepped off the map. In the 2 decades since, there have been no confirmed sightings, no arrests, no evidence of a crime, but also no Maura. And this was just the beginning. Maura Murray was no stranger to pressure. A standout student and competitive athlete, she had always balanced high expectations with a quiet intensity. But as investigators and her family began to look closer at her final weeks, it became clear something in Maura's life was unraveling. Just before her disappearance, Maura had been caught using a stolen credit card to order food. It wasn't a violent crime, but it was completely out of character. and it suggested financial strain or impulsive behavior. She was also in the middle of nursing school, a demanding program that had taken a toll on her academically and emotionally. Her relationship with her long-distance boyfriend, Billy Roche, seemed solid on the surface. They had dated since West Point, and she often referred to him with affection in emails and calls. But their relationship had complexities. Maura had reportedly communicated with another man online, a track coach she had known years before, and there were rumors of strain between her and Billy. Some even speculated she wanted a break from the relationship, or possibly had secrets she didn't want to share. Then came the car crash on February 7th, just 2 nights before her disappearance. Maura had borrowed her father Fred's new Toyota Corolla to go shopping. That night, she crashed it into a guardrail. The exact circumstances are still unclear. Some reports say she was drinking. Others say she wasn't. She spoke with police, filed a report, and her father paid for the damage. But what stuck with people wasn't the crash. It was Maura's emotional state afterward. Her father said she was upset but calm. Later that night, a phone call made her cry uncontrollably while speaking to someone, likely Billy. The contents of that call remain unclear. In the following days, she appeared distracted. On February 9th, the day she vanished, she did a number of puzzling things. She packed most of her belongings into boxes in her dorm room and left a printed email to Billy on top of one. She also returned dorm keys and other materials to the campus housing office. Yet she didn't tell anyone goodbye. She withdrew nearly all the money in her account, $280, and bought alcohol. She searched for lodging in Vermont and MapQuest directions to the White Mountains area. To anyone looking from the outside, it might have looked like she was planning a short, solo getaway. But when pieced together, these actions felt deliberate, like someone planning a clean break. Still, no note was found. No journal entry explained what she was doing. And no one knew she had left until the police called Fred Murray to say they'd found his daughter's car, empty, on Route 112. To understand Maura's state of mind, investigators looked into her digital footprint. Her computer activity showed searches for directions and vacation rentals. But there was no indication of a destination beyond somewhere north. It didn't appear that she had coordinated with anyone. In interviews, friends described her as smart, introverted, and sometimes elusive. She didn't overshare, and often kept her emotions to herself. Her quiet nature now made everything harder to interpret. Was she running from responsibility, from someone, or from herself? There were also tensions within her family. While Fred Murray became a central voice in the search, not all members agreed on how to handle the case. Some felt law enforcement didn't act fast enough. Others believed that Maura's secrets were being overlooked. Fred remained insistent. Maura was not suicidal. She was not running away. He believed foul play was involved. But with no witnesses, no communications, and no confirmed timeline after 7:27 p.m., the mystery only deepened. One strange detail: a few days before she left, Maura reportedly asked a fellow nursing student how to rent a condo with cash and no ID. It struck the student as odd but not alarming, until later. None of this provided answers. Only layers. Maura's life wasn't falling apart in a dramatic or obvious way. It was more like a quiet, internal collapse. A series of strange decisions that didn't make sense on their own, but in hindsight, seemed to signal that she was preparing for something. What that something was remains unclear. What we do know is that Maura Murray, a young woman with everything ahead of her, walked away from her car on a cold February night, and left her entire life behind. In the hours after Maura Murray disappeared, the search efforts were small but immediate. Local officers from the Haverhill Police Department walked the snowy road near the crash site with flashlights. They looked for footprints, signs of struggle, any clue she had run into the woods, or had been picked up. But there was nothing. The snow that had blanketed the area had also erased any trail she may have left behind. When dawn came on February 10th, the search widened. State police joined the effort. Helicopters flew overhead. Dogs were brought in. But again, Maura's scent disappeared within 100 yards of the Saturn. This suggested something investigators didn't want to believe just yet. She may have gotten into another vehicle. The idea that she had been picked up, willingly or not, quickly became central to the investigation. But the problem was, no one had seen anything. No car, no driver, no scream. In a town as small as Haverhill, that silence was deafening. The location of the crash was key. Route 112 is a winding rural road surrounded by forest, with limited lighting and few homes. It wasn't a place you'd expect someone to walk far, especially in freezing temperatures, wearing only jeans and a light jacket. If she had tried to hike through the woods, search teams believed they would have found her. But they didn't. The condition of the vehicle raised more questions. The damage wasn't severe. The airbags had deployed, but the car was still operable. There were red stains inside, later confirmed to be wine. A box of Franzia wine had burst in the crash. An empty soda bottle smelled strongly of alcohol. To some, this painted a picture of Maura drinking and driving. To others, it looked staged. And then there was the rag. Police found a white rag stuffed into the Saturn's tailpipe. To this day, no one has definitively explained it. Some speculated Maura placed it there to keep the car from emitting smoke if she was trying to avoid attention. Others believed it was unrelated, just a strange coincidence. As days turned into weeks, frustration set in. The media began to circle. Journalists were fascinated by the case. A young woman from a good family, with no history of criminal behavior, vanishing without a trace in the middle of a snowy road. The coverage grew, but so did the questions. Why did it take days for law enforcement to treat the case as potentially criminal? Why weren't surrounding states immediately alerted? Why wasn't the scene treated as a possible abduction from the start? Fred Murray, Maura's father, quickly became the face of the search. He drove from Massachusetts to New Hampshire as soon as he heard the news. In press conferences and interviews, he criticized the police response and begged for federal help. He believed his daughter had been abducted, and that every hour without answers made recovery less likely. Flyers were posted. A website was launched. Volunteers combed the area. Psychics reached out. So did tipsters. But most of the tips led nowhere. In one instance, search dogs were taken into the woods behind a nearby residence and seemed to pick up a scent. Ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs were used. But still, no body, no items, no evidence. Some residents believed Maura might have found shelter in one of the many abandoned cabins scattered through the White Mountains. Others believed she had left the scene by choice, perhaps catching a ride or hitchhiking. But why leave all her things behind? Why disappear into the night with no plan? The FBI eventually got involved, but by then, the trail was cold. There were no electronic records after February 9th. Her cell phone had not pinged any towers. Her bank account remained untouched. Her social security number never showed up again. In the digital age, this was almost unheard of. Over time, the tone of the investigation shifted. Without any physical evidence or credible sightings, theories took over. Was she running from something? Was she trying to start over? Had she planned this for weeks? Or was it spontaneous? With no solid answers, the vacuum was filled by internet sleuths. Forums like Web Sleuths and Reddit created massive threads dissecting every aspect of Maura's life and disappearance. People analyzed CCTV frames, phone records, weather data, and witness statements. But even with all this attention, there were no answers. Only questions. And the longer time passed, the harder it became to separate fact from speculation. By the first anniversary of Maura's disappearance, her case had become one of the most talked about unsolved mysteries in America. Candlelight vigils were held. A reward was offered. The crash site became a place of pilgrimage for true crime followers. Still, no trace of Maura had ever been found. She had seemingly vanished into thin air. and the search, though relentless, was starting to feel like a chase after a ghost. As the official search for Maura Murray began to slow, a different kind of investigation started picking up speed, one that wouldn't be led by law enforcement, but by the internet. In online forums, message boards, and amateur blogs, people across the country, and the world, began trying to solve the mystery themselves. Some were retired law enforcement, others were just fascinated by unsolved cases. But what united them was a single question: what happened to Maura Murray? And depending on who you asked, the answer varied wildly. One of the most discussed theories was that Maura planned her own disappearance. Her actions before she vanished, lying to professors, packing her room, withdrawing cash, and driving hours into the mountains, did resemble someone preparing to leave it all behind. Supporters of this theory pointed to her emotional state, her possible legal trouble, and her secrecy. But this theory never sat well with Maura's family. Her father, Fred Murray, was adamant. She didn't run away. She didn't stage this. He believed from day one that Maura had been the victim of foul play. Another popular theory was that Maura had intended to meet someone. A friend? A secret boyfriend? A stranger? To this day, no one has come forward claiming they were supposed to see her that night. But some pointed to her internet searches as potential breadcrumbs, lodging in remote areas, maps of Vermont, even directions to the Canadian border. Then there were darker theories. Could Maura have hitched a ride and been picked up by the wrong person? Had she fled the crash only to encounter danger on that quiet mountain road? Given the isolated area, it wasn't impossible. But again, no trace. No clothing. No remains. Nothing. Some believed she died of exposure in the woods, possibly disoriented or injured after the crash. But extensive searches with trained dogs, cadaver units, and helicopters turned up no sign of her. Experts said it was unlikely someone could be that close to the road and remain undiscovered for so long. And then came the truly bizarre theories, ones that ventured beyond logic. Some suggested Maura had joined a cult. Others believed she had assumed a new identity and was living off the grid. A few theorists even connected her to other missing women in the region, attempting to tie her disappearance into a larger pattern. None of these theories were ever substantiated with evidence. Still, they fueled podcasts, books, and YouTube channels. Maura became a symbol in the true crime world, not just for what happened to her, but for what was never found. Over the years, supposed sightings poured in. New Hampshire, Vermont, Canada. A woman who looked like Maura working at a strip club. Another one walking a dog in Quebec. None were confirmed. Theories were endless. But facts, those were still missing. 20 years have passed since Maura Murray vanished, and yet her name continues to haunt the world of true crime. Her disappearance isn't just a cold case, it's a cultural marker, a puzzle that refuses to be solved, a story that lingers in the collective consciousness because of how ordinary and how mysterious it was. In the years following her disappearance, Maura's case inspired a wave of media attention. Documentaries, podcasts, news specials, and books have tried to retrace her final moments. And while each has shed new light or offered new theories, none have delivered the answer her family is still desperate to find. Fred Murray, Maura's father, remained one of the most vocal advocates for his daughter for decades. He pushed for access to police files, organized independent searches, and challenged officials when leads were ignored or dismissed. His resolve turned Maura's case from a regional curiosity into a national story. In his words, "We're never giving up. Never." Maura's siblings, too, have worked to keep her memory alive, participating in interviews and online efforts to crowdsource tips. The family launched websites, supported documentaries, and engaged directly with online sleuths, sometimes cautiously, sometimes frustrated by the rumors and wild accusations that surrounded the case. One of the most enduring impacts of Maura's story is how it changed the role of internet investigations. Hers was one of the first major missing persons cases to be dissected in real time by the public. Entire forums were dedicated to timelines, maps, and behavioral analyses. Strangers became obsessed. Some crossed the line, harassing her family, trespassing near the crash site, or inventing connections. It forced the true crime community to confront an uncomfortable question. When does curiosity become intrusion? And who owns a story once it enters the public eye? Despite the noise, Maura's case helped push forward digital awareness campaigns and the use of online platforms in missing persons investigations. Her face remains a symbol in media aimed at keeping long-term missing cases in the spotlight. As for law enforcement, their position has evolved. While the early investigation faced criticism for moving slowly and treating Maura as a runaway, later efforts acknowledged the possibility of foul play. In 2021, a section of the area near the crash site was excavated based on a tip. Nothing was found, but it reignited attention and showed that authorities were still willing to pursue answers. Over the years, the New Hampshire State Police has reiterated that Maura's case remains open. But no suspects have ever been named. No new physical evidence has emerged. No digital activity has surfaced. It's as if time swallowed her whole. For the public, Maura's story remains a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly someone can vanish, and how hard it can be to find truth in a void. Her case highlights the limitations of even the most advanced forensic tools, especially when time and weather erase the trail. But it also reminds us of something deeper: how the people left behind carry the weight of the unknown. The question of what happened to Maura Murray still sparks debate. But perhaps the more important question is what her story taught us. About the limits of the justice system. About the power of media. About the value of persistence. Maura was more than a mystery. She was a sister, a daughter, a student, a young woman with ambition and vulnerability. Her smile in family photos. Her emails to friends. Her academic struggles. All these fragments remind us she was real, not a symbol, not a theory. And so, every February, strangers light candles. They revisit old footage. They post a photo again, just in case someone sees it at the right time. Because the case isn't just unsolved. It's unfinished. Where is Maura Murray? The world still wants to know.